All right, we are doing your ETS Practice Math Test 022, question 34. You're given this quartic function, and they tell you two of the zeros. They tell you the zeros are x equals -5/2 and x equals 1/3. So what you are trying to figure out is what are the other two zeros. Now, my first instinct is to take the entire f of x and put that bad boy into the y equals in your calculator and look for intersections. However, I then look down where I have to fill out and I notice something that should pique your interest, and that is I, which means they're imaginary numbers or imaginary solutions, and imaginary solutions will not appear on a graph. Okay? If there's one imaginary solution, there have to be two imaginary solutions. They always happen in pairs. Excuse me, in pairs. And so basically the only way I can do this is based on these zeros that I do know. I'm going to need to divide them out of that function to make the function, and keep in mind, if I've got two zeros, that's going to bump this down to a quadratic after I divide, okay? And that is something then that I could put into the quadratic formula. So that's what I'm going to have to do. So I'm going to need to divide 6x to the fourth plus x cubed minus x squared plus 75x minus 25 by both the factor that created -5/2 as a 0 and the factor that created 1/3 as a 0. I want to show you quickly. Now, we usually kind of skip over this, but if I wanted to unsolve for x so that it's equal to 0, this is how I would do it. If I have x equals -5/2, I could multiply both sides by 2. All right. Times 2 times 2. And that would be 2x equals, those cancel, -5. And remember, it's a 0. I want it to set equal to 0. So now I could add 5. And so I will have 2x plus 5 equals 0. So that means that one of the factors is 2x plus 5. Okay? But I don't normally solve that equation because I kind of can imagine I would multiply by 3 and subtract 1. So the factor that made x equals 1/3 is going to be 3x minus 1. Okay? However, if you get stuck and you're not sure if that's right, literally do this and unsolve until you get a 0 on one side. So x equals 1/3. You can multiply both sides by 3 to clear that fraction. So you'll have 3x equals 1, and then subtract 1 from both sides. 3x minus 1 equals 0. That's the other factor. All right. If these are the factors, I could do two division problems, or I could multiply these together and divide it out of the other one all at one time. And that's what I'm going to do. So 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x times minus 1 is minus 2x. 5 times 3x is 15x. And 5 times -1 is minus 5. So this 6x squared plus 13x minus 5 is what I am going to divide into that biggie rat quartic polynomial. So this is how you're going to do it, and you just take your time. This is not as bad as what a lot of people think. All right, if I do 6x squared plus 13x minus 5, and the process is really just the same as, I'm going to scoot this a little bit, is just the same as just regular old division. 6x squared plus 13x minus 5, which I'm going to divide into 6x to the fourth plus x to the third minus x squared plus 75x minus 25. All right, I'm going to zoom in on this and just be careful. Kind of like when you're doing division with just numbers, you only really pay attention to the first term. If you have 6x squared and you want to divide it into 6x to the fourth, you would have to multiply it by, or you wanted to get 6x to the fourth, you'd have to multiply by x squared, correct? And that is because x squared times 6x squared gives you 6x to the fourth. Then you have to multiply the others. X squared times 13x gives you plus 13x to the third. And x squared times minus 5 gives you minus 5x squared. Now, in regular division, just like right now, you have to subtract. But what I say as I'm doing this is draw the line, change all the signs. Draw the line, change all the signs. And now you just combine going down. 6x to the fourth minus 6x to the fourth cancels. X to the third power minus 13x to the third power gives you minus 12x to the third power. And negative x squared plus 5x squared gives you plus 4x squared. Just like in regular division, you're going to drop the next term as well. Okay, so now, same as before, you pay attention to 6x squared and that first term. What can I multiply 6x squared by to get a negative 12x to the third power? And hopefully you are seeing that you would multiply it by negative 2 and x. Negative 2x times 6x squared would give you negative 12x to the third power. So now you multiply that negative 2x times every term that you see in the divisor. Okay, so I'm going to get negative 12x to the third power minus 26x squared, right? And then plus 10x. And like I said before, draw the line, change all the signs. And this term cancels, and you will end up with 26 plus 4 is 30x squared, and 75x minus 10x is going to be plus 65x and minus 25. Now here's where we say a prayer and hope that it all comes out correctly, because that's what we need it to do if we're going to end up using the quadratic formula. So again, pay attention to those first terms. How many times will 6x squared go into 30x squared? Or better, maybe a better way to say that or think about it is, what can I multiply 6x squared by to get 30x squared? And hopefully you see that you could just multiply it by 5, positive 5. All right, and that's because positive 5 times 6x squared is 30x squared. All right, I don't know why it's doing this. 30. Sometimes when I change colors, it becomes happy again. 30x squared. 5 times 13x is plus 65x. And 5 times minus 5 is minus 25. Do recall, though, draw the line, change all the signs. And it is cancel, 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 which means it divides out evenly, no remainder. And so now you know that this divides into that many times. This is the equation that you get when you divide the factors that you already know out of it. So if you have f of x equals x squared, well, don't write that. Let me just do this. X squared minus 2x plus 5. I'm going to have to use the quadratic formula. I know a is right here, is 1. B is 2, and C is 5. So quadratic formula is negative B. Change the color, see if it'll be happy. Negative B plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2 times A, which is 2. All right, so that's going to give you 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 minus 20 over 2, which is going to give you 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 16 over 2, which is going to be equal to 2 plus or minus 4i all over 2 is the same as each over 2, which means you've got 1 plus or minus 2i as your answer. So your two answers are 1 plus 2i and 1 minus 2i, and that's how you would fill that in.